When a sovereign government's mandate and a technological monopoly's reach collide, they create a specific test of modern leverage. On one side is Donald Trump, wielding the institutional weight of the United States presidency. This power is rooted in the drafting of federal policy, command over traditional global media, and the ability to project military force. On the other side is Elon Musk. His authority bypasses political structures entirely, built instead on private capital, ownership of physical aerospace infrastructure, and control over global information networks. If these two forces enter into direct conflict, we have to ask which of these distinct forms of power actually makes the other more vulnerable. From the Oval Office, the president commands the executive branch. This includes directing federal agencies, deploying the military, and shaping foreign policy through direct executive action. It is an immense, blunt instrument of statecraft. But that instrument is systematically throttled. By constitutional design, presidential authority is bottlenecked by federal law and constantly subject to judicial review. If the president wants to secure long-term policy or allocate vast amounts of funding, those requests must pass through the legislative branch at the Capitol, which exists specifically to check unilateral spending. Furthermore, the executive term is strictly capped at 4 years. The political leverage inherent to the office comes with an unavoidable expiration date. So while the state possesses overwhelming authority on paper, that authority is boxed in by design. When you compare that structured, temporary political power to a private, unregulated enterprise, the math looks very different. The political scientist Joseph Nye defined soft power as the ability to shape the preferences of others through attraction and persuasion, rather than coercing them with physical force. A U.S. president relies heavily on soft power, using mass media to broadcast their agenda. But while the politician uses the network to communicate, the technocrat owns the algorithms and the distribution network itself. This chart displays the scale of that ownership. According to the Center for Countering Digital Hate, Elon Musk's personal political posts on X amassed 17.1 billion views between July and November of 2024. That is more than double the views of all U.S. political campaign ads on the platform combined during the same period. To reach that exact same audience, a traditional political campaign would need to spend an estimated $24 million. The platform owner pays absolutely nothing. A politician operates within the media landscape, shouting through a megaphone to project influence. The technocrat owns the megaphone, allowing him to set the terms of engagement and filter what the public sees. That control extends far beyond digital timelines. The true leverage lies in physical, borderless infrastructure operating thousands of miles above the Earth. This chart highlights the density of SpaceX's orbital network. Since 2019, the company has launched thousands of Starlink units into orbit. Today, a single private company controls more than half of all active satellites currently surrounding the globe. By controlling this network, a private citizen becomes an independent geopolitical broker. In Ukraine, the government and military rely on Starlink as the backbone of their communication infrastructure, placing critical wartime logistics subject to the decisions of one man. He engages in statecraft directly, joining calls with foreign leaders and establishing close diplomatic relationships with figures like Argentina's president, Javier Milei. Yet this vast private empire did not materialize in a vacuum. It was built using an estimated $38 billion in government loans, tax credits, and federal contracts. Because the state technically holds the purse strings, an inevitable question arises. What happens when the sovereign attempts to cut the technocrat off? That exact scenario played out when Donald Trump publicly suggested terminating government contracts held by Elon Musk's companies following a policy dispute. Acting on this directive, the White House and General Services Administration initiated a sweeping review to identify potential waste across billions in SpaceX agreements. The government officials conducting the review found that the SpaceX contracts were virtually untouchable. The Department of Defense and NASA have no viable alternatives. SpaceX provides the only American spacecraft certified to carry astronauts to the International Space Station, and their Falcon rockets remain the primary vehicle for launching national security payloads. The vulnerability test yielded a definitive result. If the state severed ties with the private tech network, its own critical aerospace and intelligence functions would collapse. The president possesses the constitutional power of the state, but the billionaire holds an irreplaceable functional monopoly over the physical logistics required to operate that state. After utilizing massive initial public funding to build his infrastructure, the technocrat is now in a position to pull up the ladder, pushing for deregulation and dismantling the mechanisms that might foster future competition or oversight. If power is strictly measured by who holds the most leverage in a crisis, the empirical evidence points to one conclusion. The United States government currently needs Elon Musk more than he needs them. It leaves us with a stark reality to consider. We must evaluate the long-term stakes when an unelected private citizen holds more infrastructural leverage than the world's most powerful democracy.